Hey, thank you guys for checking out the Victims and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit that educates and engages individuals on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia, and welcome to our Celebration of Diversity series. This is episode 1, where we are discussing 1997's Good Burger. We hope you guys enjoy.
For this? Meet Dexter and Ed, the hardworking crew of Good Burger. One thinks he's all that. What? The other isn't all there.
Just give me a good shake.
Okay. I want Good Burger out of business.
Now the competition is out to swallow them up. And they're putting their buns on the line.
This is what I call fast food.
In the Battle of the Burgers. Good Burger. Rated PG. Starts Friday, July 25th, everywhere.
Well, the time has finally come. You guys have heard us tease them in episode 380, Friday the 13th, part 6, Jason Lives, and more recently in our Rocco's Modern Life. Well, we finally have the host of Love What I Love podcast, and we are joined by Andy and Masha and my right-hand man for this series, Celebration of Diversity, Mr. Kales Davis.
What's happening?
Hello, thank you guys so much for having us. We are pumped to be doing this guest appearance with you.
Ditto what Andy said. This is awesome, and it's so nice to finally talk to you guys.
Yeah.
I've just been, I think every day for the last 2 weeks, just been talking, or what feels like every day, if not every other day, to Andy on Instagram. And,
you guys are BFFs.
It's so weird because I don't know. I just randomly came across the podcast one day on Spotify. I was looking for new podcasts to check out, and I was like, this is an interesting dynamic. And so I checked out a couple episodes, and I spent literally all days, multiple days at work, just listening and going through the catalog. You guys make me want to go back and revisit so many movies, and I am apparently in the weird minority demographic for your audience where I pull from both Masha's picks and Andy's picks. It's super bizarre.
Yeah, you are definitely unique on that one because our audience is often either on my side or on Masha's side when it comes to movie choices, and it's kind of why I love doing our show, is because we couldn't have different tastes in movies. And so it's, some podcasts that do movies kind of lean a little more towards the nerdy film stuff, and then some's a little bit more mainstream, and I feel like we get to do both at the same time while still being true to our fandom and all that.
I feel like the first 18 years of my life, when I was actually living under rules in my parents' house, are all with Masha's taste, and then once I got a Blockbuster card, I was like, this is what Andy is like, and this is kind of what cinephiles are. I loved your guys' Psycho episode. Also, Being John Malkovich is an underrated masterpiece as well.
Big time.
Charlie Kaufman is just such a master of his craft in just every way. But we've been hyping this up for a couple weeks now, and I just want to just give us the elevator pitch. What is Love What I Love?
So Love What I Love is what I feel a lot of couples have, where you have that moment where you're with someone, or even it could be with a friend, and you just say, you haven't seen, and insert your favorite movie. And whether that be something famous like Jurassic Park, or something a little bit more niche, like say a Being John Malkovich. And Masha and I, we've been together a long time now. We just celebrated our 6-year anniversary. And prior to this podcast, our whole relationship was that. It was just me being shocked that she had not seen so many just famous American, or not even American movies, just movies in general. And then same thing on her end. I mean, I'll let her explain, but watching, stuff from kind of a little bit more, I don't know. Masha, what's your taste in movies like?
Well, I mean, I have a wide range as well. I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but I think that there are a lot of moments in a relationship, from my point of view, where I want to introduce Andy to a movie, but it's not necessarily the best movie of all time. It's just a fun time, right? everyone has that movie that they're kind of embarrassed that they love. And when you're in a relationship, it's sort of hard to bring it up sometimes. So I love that we have this podcast because it's a platform for us to be like, all right, we're sitting down, we're watching this movie, and we're going to talk about it, in depth. How many people have in-depth conversations about Bring It On with their boyfriends? So it's just a great opportunity for us to just bring up movies and have in-depth conversations about them on a podcast.
Yeah, and I realized I skirted your question a little bit when you said the elevator pitch. We went the long route.
No, it's all good.
The elevator pitch is essentially week by week we take turns hosting our show. Whoever's turn it is picks a movie that they loved, and then we do our best for the next hour to hour and a half, get the other person to either do our best to get them to love it as well, and then in also the audience, not just Masha or myself.
And sharing cool facts about the movies along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, you guys definitely do your fair share of research. Like, I learned so much on the Cinderella episode. And I was like, I have oddly enough a greater respect for this movie that I haven't watched in forever. It's been on my list to watch since they put it on Disney Plus. But one of the things that I've been married for 7 years and I've been with my wife for a total of 10. But one of the things that I love movies, and so this was like one of the first conversations we had where it'd be like, what's your favorite movie? And so she would tell me hers, which is The Two Towers. And then I came to find out that she had never seen any of the Batman movies, and was the summer, we started dating the summer that Dark Knight Rises came out. And so I sat her down for a month straight and we watched Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman, and so by the time we got to Batman and Robin, she was just ready to I'm pretty sure break up with me and not spend the rest of her life. She's like, I can't believe
hilarious.
You brought me to this disaster. Those of us that have lived through the era of bat nipples know what I'm talking about.
Been there.
But it's interesting too that your guys' show is still fairly young, and I'm curious, like, how much of the pandemic actually played into the creation of your guys' show.
Oh, I would say 90%. So I've been a huge podcast listener for almost a decade now, and I've always kind of in the back of my mind wanted to do it, but never really, had the best pitch or the best motivation. And it was kind of being in lockdown. I mean, I'm a freelance sound mixer, so I work in the film industry. So my industry was one of the first things to be shut down as soon as pandemic started. So I was out of work completely. And Masha's an editor. She did have a staff job at the time, so she did just move to working from home. And we had a different apartment that we had now without this awesome office that I'm in. So it was a very small space. I found myself not only nothing to do every day, but essentially sitting in the bedroom waiting for her to be done with work because I didn't want to walk in and out of her work meetings. And I just needed something to keep myself going. I found my normal hobbies were getting really boring when you have nothing to do all day. I wasn't having as much fun watching movies or, playing a video game or anything like that. And I was just like, let's really give this a crack. And we just came up with this pitch kind of, like I said, based on our relationship. And the Batman thing you just said is hits so close to home for me because I did the same thing with Masha, but with the X-Men movies. I just have a huge love for all of those. And when she never saw any of them, we sat through almost all of them. And all we have left is still to watch is Logan, but we're saving it for the podcast now. But yeah, I mean, pandemic was kind of all the motivation we needed to get this thing going.
Oh man, I feel like Batman's next. I feel like you've been inspired.
I might spare you from the bat nipples, but you're definitely watching at least the Christopher Nolan ones. That's going to happen.
I'm so curious what that means.
When you see it, you'll understand it. Yeah, guys. I mean, I love y'all's relationship is centered on a love of film because my relationship is almost the same. I've been with my girlfriend now for 4 years, going on 4 years. And the thing that really brings us together is that each night we can come together sometimes, and we'll either sit back and watch a TV show together, or we'll watch a film together. And she has told me, in the process of me over the last couple of years becoming a film critic here in Seattle, that she's been introduced to a wide variety of films that she probably would have never seen. Like, I know for her now, Parasite, is one of her favorite films. And she was telling me that before meeting me, she wasn't watching films like this. She wasn't introduced to a lot of Korean films or foreign films, or even like certain like subgenres of American film. And bless her heart, she's even been with me through some one and done films like Requiem for a Dream, which is something that I surprised her with, and it kind of almost didn't go over very well. And there was another time I took her to see Midsummer a couple of years ago for a screening, and she kind of was like, "It's good, but I never want to see it again." But I like that she's always willing to try new things when it comes to film or even TV shows. And I think all of us, we are in agreement that, our relationships outside of love and everything else that comes with it, we also share a love of film with each other. And it doesn't matter whether, this person likes this or this person loves that. As long as we're just interacting and coming together, for a film, then that's a beautiful thing. And I support that.
Yeah, totally. So, sorry, go ahead, Masha.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I agree with everything you said, Khalees, and I think it's awesome when you can watch a film and rather than just say, I liked it and I don't like it, just actually think about and talk about what you appreciate about a film. You might not like the whole package, but there might be bits and pieces that you do, and you can talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so where can people find you guys online to follow the podcast?
Well, they can find us at lwil-podcast. We use the same at for all our platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find us anywhere.
Yeah, and we try to post ads every week for our episodes, but I got to throw it out to Masha and her skills. Every week she does Photoshop our faces into the movie poster for whatever movie we're doing. And honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast is seeing how she comes up with the craziest next thing to put our faces on these posters. They're amazing. You got to check them out.
And I will say we sometimes bring friends onto the film. So just know you both have an open invitation.
Oh,
absolutely.
Tight.
Thank you.
I really did like the one of the episodes that you guys have done, Spirited Away, had another couple brought on. And I liked that platform of having other people on the show. I think it did a really awesome job. And I'm been hyping this up, so please go check out Love What I Love. Wherever you guys get your podcast from, make sure that you guys follow them on all social media. Andy is not messing around when he talks about Masha's Photoshop skills. Look no further than Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But I said in the notes that I had a fun fact for Andy. So like we said at the beginning of this episode, Andy and I have been talking about a lot of horror. We're talking about Good Burger today, but Good Burger actually has some ties to the horror genre. Do you know what they are?
I do not. I'm very excited. I don't know where you're going with this.
So I was curious because the cinematography to me looked kind of familiar. It had a familiar feel to it, so I Googled the gentleman who did the cinematography for Good Burger. His name is Mac Alberg, and his last film that he worked on was called Evil Bong. He has also worked on Puppet Master, The Legacy, but most famously known for 1985's cult classic, Reanimator.
The guy who shot Reanimator shot Good Burger?
Yes.
What?
Bananas. I never would have guessed. I mean, I gotta say, I know we're not jumping into it yet, but that opening nightmare sequence was a little bit horror-ish, so I could see his influences right away. That's awesome, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I've seen Evil Bong. It's very silly, but it's kind of a good time.
I thought...
I will just say I'm not a horror fan, so all of these titles just went over my head.
That's all right. It's just like anti-Good Burger. His career is like so weird because he was also the cinematographer for Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Oh snap!
So
look at that.
Yeah, quite a unique career this gentleman has. But this episode in particular is our kickoff to our June series called Celebration of Diversity, and we're so excited to just jump into all of these movies that Celeste and I have handpicked this month. But Celeste, tell us a little bit about what Celebration of Diversity is all about, please.
Celebration of Diversity is all about selecting films not only with diverse leads and people of color, but also giving a lens to films that are outside of the typical minority films that you see. I mean, we see in Hollywood that they still have a problem with making a lot of slave films and making a lot of films where black people or other people of color are drug dealers, they're killers, they're gangsters, fitting right into the stereotypes that racists will mostly buy into. And while there are a couple of films that do deal with that aspect, of society, we tried our hardest, me and Josh tried to pick films that put black people in a better light. And, show people that, it's not all about slave films. It's not all about trauma. Black people can be funny. Black people can have fun. Black people can fall in love. Black people can be superheroes. Black people can be action heroes. I mean, there's a wide diverse of African American tales that not a lot of people see. They only see what the mainstream Hollywood would push out there, and most of the time, it's Oscar bait. Or other times it just puts black people or other people of color into a bad light. But we tried our best to select films that were going to put black people not only in a respectful light, but also show a different kind of storytelling that we often see with black characters in film.
I think, too, one of the things that when we started having conversations about how we wanted the series to look, and one of the very first suggestions you said was Good Burger, and I was like, it kind of taken by surprise, and I'll kind of talk about this in a few minutes, but last year when we did our Watchmen series and also the Black Lives Matter series, the point of those was really to kind of like dig up a lot of history that had either kind of like been either written out or like fallen silent. And I remember me and you had this conversation last year when Antebellum had come out, and you were kind of talking about the exact point that you had just made about, we need to kind of get away as a movie going public from just gearing all of these movies of black people towards slavery or drug dealers or gangster archetypes, and really kind of showcase them into different things. That's the thing that we're going to be exploring this month, and I'm so excited to kick it off with Good Burger, because Good Burger, I think, was just such a huge part of my childhood. I can't obviously speak for anyone else on this, but I'm convinced that that Ed, the character of Ed by Kel Mitchell is that's the word, is the reason why I have such a weird sense of humor. So but yeah, so just kind of connect. What are some connections to the films for this film, particularly for you guys?
So for me, I was born in 1990, so I was the perfect age to fall in love with all that and Kenan-and-Kel and everything these guys were putting together. And I definitely saw this in the movie theaters. I actually realized when we watched it this time, I have not seen it since 1997 in the movie theaters. So it was one of those, like, I thought I remembered it, but there was plenty of stuff that hit me off guard. But yeah, I grew up watching all that, everything that these guys are putting together. And I've actually been thinking about it recently, and I think Kenan Thompson might be one of the few celebrities who I can say has been entertaining me my entire life. Yes. And that's all the way back from Mighty Ducks 2 up until me watching SNL every week currently to this day. So Kenan has just always been kind of a part of my life, and obviously Kenan-and-Kel, all that show. So for me, this couldn't hit harder in the nostalgia factor. I love these guys, and I will always have like a place in my heart for this incredibly silly Nickelodeon style of humor that no matter how old I get will still put a smile on my face.
And I'm actually the complete opposite of Andy in that I did not watch this movie in theaters, but somehow this movie reached me when I was a kid growing up. and has been memorable ever since. I feel like, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but either you were a Disney kid or a Nick kid, and I was on the Disney side. I wasn't as cool as you Nick guys. And I was talking to Andy about this earlier. Like, not that it's fact, but I can't recall a Disney original movie that stars two black people that I mean, just to stop the sentence there, like, I can't really name one off the top of my head. So I think that's why this movie is so memorable for me, and especially not having like a token black person.
Twitches,
yes.
Just throwing that out there.
There we go. There's one.
I was ride or die Nickelodeon, so I don't know any of these Disney channels. We didn't have Disney Channel in my family. It just wasn't part of our cable package. So I, like, Masha was going through Disney Plus the other day looking at her favorite movies from growing up, and I was like, I think I've seen Up, Up, and Away, and that's the only one I've seen. And I don't know how I got that one.
I mean, I kind of straddled the fence between both. I was a Disney kid, but, I mean, if I had to choose, I was mostly Nickelodeon. I mean, there was Rugrats, then there was Doug, then there was Cat Dog, and then there was All That, and even Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and all those shows. For me, Kenan-and-Kel, being a young kid, you know, in the 90s and everything, they were almost cultural icons to me. Yep. You know, because for, like you brought up, Masha, is that there was not really other shows where there was like two black guys, you know, doing comedy shows, doing comedy sketches together. And they used to always make me laugh. I was a big fan of them, especially All That when Kenan was on there. And so when they had a film together, I really don't know how I came across Good Burger, honestly, as well. I just know that one day my mom came home with the videotape, and I fell in love with it. This was back when they had the orange VHSs for Nickelodeon
Classic.
and Paramount. Yeah, classics. I wore that tape out, especially a Good Burger. And I can just remember just watching it all the time, over and over again. Like, every day I would have to watch Good Burger. And I noticed that for me, I would love watching it when I would eat, because the film would make me hungry, in a sense, you know, because of all the burgers, especially even the Mondo burger. Even though now when you look at it, it's like, oh my God, they're putting these hormonal additives in there. Like, the bigger the burger as a kid, you're like, wow, that's amazing. I want to eat that, you know? And it was just also great just to see these two black guys just like having like almost like a Bill and Ted kind of adventure. And I'm not sure how familiar y'all are with Bill and Ted, but I know for Bill and Ted, they were kind of the generation before mine's. And so I was born in 91. So I would say that these films were kind of like Bill and Ted for me. And oftentimes we didn't see black comedians back in that day having a chance to do those kind of films. And it was great seeing Kenan-and-Kel, you know, in the prime of their careers, being able to have a film like this, being bankrolled by a major studio, and also doing fairly successful. You know, it wasn't the biggest box office hit, but it made a lot of money, and it still lives on in a lot of people's eyes, including ours.
And I mean, I grew up also a Nickelodeon kid, much like Andy. It didn't include it in my cable package, and then it did, and I discovered Kim Possible, and it was all downhill from there. But all that was really the first show of its kind that gave not only a set of, you know, two black guys like Kenan-and-Kel a widespread demographic to, you know, grow up with an entire generation, but it also introduced, you know, I think there was a Hispanic girl in there as well. You know, there have been the people don't remember this, but Fluffy. I don't remember the guy's last name, but Fluffy had a season on there. Like this show introduced what diversity was, and we've never seen really a show like it since. And from that spun off Kenan-and-Kel, and I don't know if you guys caught this on the or how much you remember of Kenan-and-Kel, but there's some Kenan-and-Kel like mannerisms that are in this movie that are staples for the show.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I took a couple of notes we were writing, and I think one of the ones you're thinking of is when Kenan yells, "Why?" like that. I remember it was always from the show.
There's another scene too where he's one of the guys from Mondo Burger is during his training, and he says, "Well, I've heard of this word, but carnivorous," and he just kind of throws his hand up. Like that was kind of always the thing that Kenan-and-kel would do when they didn't understand a word in the series. And I think for someone to grow up, our generation specifically, that grew up on all that, I think that they were able to really address a lot of more serious subjects, like acceptance and tolerance and prejudice, and to where you don't really have. I feel like they kind of like loosen the reins on our generation a little bit to not feel as maybe as hateful or as prejudiced as generations before us, because we had these entertainers that we grew up with. For all intents and purposes, I feel like Kenan-and-Kel was a part of my family. Celeste, I was right there with you. Like I had the VHS for Good Burger was the first VHS I wore out. I just played it on repeat all the time, that and the Goofy movie for whatever reason. But anyways, and so this is one of the staples in a movie that I just love revisiting, because it has all of that nostalgia that Andy was talking about, but also it really shaped me to be, in a lot of ways, the man that I am today.
Yeah, I got to double down on that. And just in talking about the celebration of diversity, like Nickelodeon in general in the 90s, I obviously didn't have these thoughts as a little kid, but it did a lot to kind of normalize these types of relationships to me, where I would watch every single show Nickelodeon put out in the 90s, and everything from Hey Arnold, being best friends with Gerald, to the Rugrats hanging out with Susie Carmichael, to all that having a multicultural cast, to Are You Afraid of the Dark having a multicultural cast. It gave me a gateway where I didn't even question why these people of different races were just friendly and didn't have any animosity towards each other. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and I could look back and be like, wow, by normalizing that for kids, it really shapes kind of how we grow and how we, meet people. And instead of having these shows that are very rigidly, all one type of people, it's a very, I think it's kind of beautiful, where it just, like, it really created a whole generation of people who are like, why couldn't my best friend be black if everything I see on TV is that as well, So I just think like that whole era of kids entertainment, they really, I don't know if it was a conscious effort or what, but it worked, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, for me, I gotta support everything you said, especially about the way that Nickelodeon was doing this. Like, it felt like Nickelodeon was only worried about getting the best talent they could for their shows. It wasn't a thing of like, hey, well, we got this many white people in the show. We got to get at least two black people right here. Like, no, it felt natural. It felt like, no, we're gonna get the best talent. And if they can offer something that we've never seen before, then let's bring them on and give them a chance. And, a lot of careers have been launched for Nickelodeon. I mean, Nick Cannon, Nick Cannon started as a writer on all that before he went on to do a movie career. Then we got Kenan Thompson, who's still working on Saturday Night Live. And Kel, he's done some things over the years, except for Like Mike 2. He should have left that alone. But yeah, I mean, it's just this celebration of diversity. I mean, Nickelodeon was already starting this in the 90s, and it wasn't like something that they were forced to do. It just felt natural, and it felt something that it was a good model for kids to grow up to. Because I grew up in Georgia, I grew up in the South, so trust me, I've seen my bit of racism. But Nickelodeon was one of the first examples to teach me that, hey, racism is not really a thing. It's a construct. It's only something that people can choose to be, but you don't have to be that way, because you see people like Kenan-and-Kel, and you see the cast of all that, and you see all these other shows where black and white people are able to be together, and it's not made a big deal. It's just people being friendly to one another and people just doing things for each other.
Yeah, and just being silly,
Yes, just being silly.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I just wanted to add to you naming all the talent that came out of all that. One thing that a lot of people don't know is it was also Neil Brennan's first writing job, and he went on to become Dave Chappelle's writing partner and the co-creator of Chappelle's Show and Half Baked. So one of his first ever writing jobs was writing for all that. So I like to throw that out there because I feel like a lot of people don't know that.
That's great.
We got a connection because Half Baked's our next episode.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do any of you guys actually know what Kel does for a living nowadays that he's no longer an actor?
No.
Music artist?
No, he is actually a youth pastor.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Wow, because I've seen him show up, because I know they revived all that like a year or two ago, and I know I've seen him show up in that, but I guess that's more of like a cameo role than the full-blown acting.
He does stuff, Coach Creighton, every once in a while.
Yeah, now that he's getting closer to the age of Coach Creighton.
Not that this is a career move or anything, but he's also on TikTok.
True.
Okay.
True.
Looks like everybody's got TikTok now.
Well, this is a celebration of diversity, and Celeste, I was really surprised when you had thrown this idea out, and I immediately, this is one of the films that, I just fell in love with. I was like, yes, please, let's do, a 4-hour episode on this movie. Not that this is going to be a 4-hour podcast, just throwing this out there. But why is this film particularly important for Black cinema?
It's important because the only other film I had seen as a kid where you saw two black characters be the leads and working together was Bad Boys with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence in '95. And you see here in Good Burger that you see both of these guys. They're two black guys. They're working in. The thing that is excellent about this film is that these are just two normal black guys. Often we see films where if you have to be a leading black guy, he has to be exceptional. He has to be miraculous. He has to be marvelous. We honestly don't get enough films where black guys are just being normal black guys. And in this film, I love that we see these two guys. One of them is working at fast food. He's kind of in his own little world and everything, but he loves his job, which is great to see. And then we see this other guy. He is forced to get a job instead of being in summer vacation. So it's kind of almost like scenarios that you can imagine yourself being. When I was little, I was thinking wow, it's going to be great, when I can finally get to buy a car, or it's going to be great when I can finally work at fast food. Because as a kid, you don't really understand the real world as it is. You kind of still have your imagination and your innocence. And this film plays to all of that. I mean, the humor is just very unorthodox. And it's not based in reality, so you have to suspend your mind watching this. And when you suspend it, you get enormous benefits from all of the crazy things that happen in this film. But it's important because, like I said before, Kenan-and-Kel were cultural icons, and I feel like they don't really get the respect that they should get these days. And I think this film started it all, and I kind of wish they would have made more of these films. I would have not minded getting a Good Burger 2. They should have just 2 years later, boom, then start a new story right then and there. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's one of the greatest, films in African American cinema canon, but it's definitely one that shows you how black people can be funny and how they don't fit into any harmful stereotypes.
They have been entertaining the idea of a Good Burger 2 for several years. But again, Nickelodeon is kind of doing what Disney did a few years ago, where they're starting to like bring back like their biggest hits and like reviving them. Like, by the time this episode drops, we're a week past the Rugrats revival from Paramount Plus. That's these classic characters in CGI, and it's so it's no surprise that these conversations have been had. But there is technically a Good Burger to Go novelization sequel to this movie.
Oh, a novelization!
Did not know that.
I didn't know that either, but I found it when I was doing just a tiny bit of research because I can't come to these things unprepared. But yeah, apparently Dan Snyder was trying to get a sequel made. I guess because this movie made money, but like you said, it wasn't like a smash hit. The studio wasn't really willing to put some money into it, so yeah, they turned the script into a novelization. And I looked it up. You can buy it on Amazon right now if you are craving the next adventures of Dexter and Ed.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to invest that money into it. I just don't have the time to actually read it. But I think this film too it has a surprising amount of heart and depth as well, of not just being comedies. And in particular, the first scene that Celeste just mentioned, the first interaction between Dexter and Ed is basically, Dexter's depressed that, he's kind of found himself in this situation. He had these big plans for summer vacation, and they kind of went out the window. And it's a very odd interpretation at the very first time, but he's kind of, symbolically just kicking back drinks, as much as you can get drunk in a kid's movie. You do it by milkshakes, or in this case, good shakes that, that double as strawberry jacuzzis. And this is a very funny interaction, but at the end of it, Dexter is really depressed, and he's also kind of has this questioning of thoughts of identity. And I think that sometimes we have plans that we want to do, and then sometimes life happens and it's just completely screws them up, and we question our own identity and how we respond to that question of identity. Is it healthy or not? And I think that, to kind of go back to the questions that we were talking about with your guys' podcast is, kind of coming into, the idea of like a pandemic. Like, you have all these plans for 2020. So many people said this year is going to be my year. And then 3 months into it, you have a pandemic. Like, it's all about how you respond. Are you going to wallow in that self-harm, that dangerous place, or are you going to do something positive and productive and breathe, change and spark and love into the world?
Absolutely. It's sort of, exactly like you said, finding that positive spin. What's the opportunity here, rather than, I can't do this, I can't do that. And yeah, it's funny looking at these characters too, because I think for a majority of this movie, Kel's character doesn't really question that at all. He kind of takes life as it comes to him, right?
Yeah, and I like kind of that angle you were taking, because I think one of the storylines that this movie kind of brings together towards the end is both Kenan's character and Kel's character are both kind of looking for the same thing. Ed is a little bit more upfront about it, just generally asking. He wants a friend out of Dexter. He's always saying, hey, can you hang out with me? Can we be friends? And I don't think Dexter knows that that's what he's looking for as well, because you could almost say him in the beginning of the movie might be a little bit more on the materialistic side. He's got his one friend from school, but all he's really worried about is hanging out by the pool, hanging out with a car, and then it finds out that the thing he actually needs is finding this little family out of the Good Burger people, and he loses all of his kind of greedy inclinations that he has early on, and changes that up for this new family and kind of a sense of purpose. Helping Good Burger becomes more important to him than scoring a couple of extra bucks so he can get on summer vacation faster.
Yeah, the identity angle is very strong in this film. I mean, you see that Dexter, he's this guy. He's clearly in it just so he can get the money to pay off the damages he did to his teacher's car and to his mom's car. But over time, he learns a lot of great life lessons that many people don't learn. He learns about, hey, you know, it's not right to take advantage of somebody just because they're nice to you or you're nice to them. You know, we see that he drafts up the contract when Ed has his sauce and is making a lot of money, and he does it to the guys who are like, hey, I'm your friend, you know, you can trust me, so just give me more of the profits and you get to keep this and that. And Ed, being the simple guy that he is, you know, he's like, hey, cool, like, hey, $67, now it's $13. I'm cool. He goes with the flow. He's almost the guy who sees the good in everything. You know, I mean, I find it hard to believe that he ever has a bad day ever in his life. Like, I'm pretty sure that, I mean, thunder could be crashing all around him. You know, things could just be in dismay. But he'll just find, like, he'll put 2 grapes in his nose and he'll become Grape Nose Boy. And and everything is all good and peachy. And I think Dexter eventually learns that sometimes in life, you know, the most important things is not just about the money. It's about relationships. You know, it's about having somebody you connect with, someone you can hang out with, someone you can come to and talk about your problems. I mean, there's a very good scene in the middle of the film where they're on top of Good Burger and it's nighttime and Dexter's talking to Ed about his father. Talking about, I haven't seen my father since 7 years and I don't remember what he looks like. And then, of course, Ed comes in like, you know, I don't remember what my dad looks like, but I see him every day. But even then, I mean, you can see that Dexter appreciates that even though he is a little bit aloof, you know, Ed is really a genuine nice guy. And then over the course of the film, we see Dexter start to change his ways and he becomes a good guy, all because of Ed.
Yeah, I love what you said there. That scene always hits me. I love it so much. And I think it's a great example of how to make light out of like a very dark like moment, or, you know, they're talking about something really serious, but are able to do that hilarious spin in like a millisecond. And, you know, as a Black person, I feel like I'm so conditioned to like look for the worst or like wait for like something bad to happen to the Black people, or like Andy knows this about me. It's very hard for me to watch movies where Black people suffer because unfortunately there are a lot of them. So I think that's one of the things that make this movie so great for me to watch and to enjoy, because even when you have moments like this, it's still easy to take in, but also appreciate the authentic moment, if that makes sense.
Even that scene in particular about how Ed responds the next time to that story, because he's telling the story of how his father like wasn't around, but like when he was around, like he gave him this yo-yo that lit up and it made these like really cool sounds and made me really nostalgic for yo-yos. But the next scene that we see him in, he is like, oh hey, I have something for you, and he gives him a yo-yo that lights up. And he took all of his earnings that he had made off of the sauce and bought him that. And it's moments like that that you kind of get to really see the genuine nature of who Ed as a person is, and really how kindness can really kind of, you know, melt away ice around the heart of Dexter, because he's a very selfish individual at the beginning of the film, and he really authentically, I would even say, hates Ed for, you know, being the cause of this accident because of the roller skating and, you know, bumping into Sinbad, aka Shaft, and, you know, then he also is like trying to like really work through that anger and that bitterness. And I think those moments of kindness really do impact. And Ed, I don't think that he's doing it intentionally, like you were saying, Celeste. Like, he's just a guy that really goes with the flow. He's just a guy that doesn't really care about stuff like that. Like, he's just going to show up and be helpful and at peace. And eventually that peace becomes contagious. And those kind acts really start to just melt away that like really grumpy exterior that Dexter has for the first half of this movie.
I agree. And one thing I don't know if you guys made this connection in your head. It might be the Nickelodeon and the working in fast food connection, but I know this predates it by a few years. But did anybody get some kind of SpongeBob SquarePants vibes out of Ed? I don't know if it's just that he loves working fast food, but it was just that overall positive energy and like loving his place in life, even if on paper it's not the grandest existence of all time. And I don't know, I was just like, man, this guy's reminded me of SpongeBob so much with his attitude and his love for fast food and his appreciation of his job. I don't know, I just thought it was really cool.
I mean, me and my girlfriend, we were watching the film and we were turning to each other. He was like, you know what? Ed does he reminds us of SpongeBob SquarePants. I mean, just a guy who's in his own little world, but he's a good guy, and it's easy for the audience to be on his side. And we even saw the car that Good Burger uses to deliver their food, and we were like, that almost looks like the car that SpongeBob drives around when they used to go in for the Krabby Patty. And we saw that the guy who was the leader of Mondo Burger, he was Plankton, pretty much. He was Plankton.
He was.
You guys just made me see this movie in a completely different way. I hate you all.
Spiritual successor to SpongeBob.
One other thing I want to add to kind of our discussion earlier about like what this film means for black cinema. I think one thing that's really kind of cool about it and impactful was, and I didn't realize who these people were at the time, but this was my introduction as a little kid to a lot of famous black entertainers, where first time I ever saw Sinbad, first time I ever saw George Clinton or heard a George Clinton song. And I don't think it was the first time I saw Shaq, because he was everywhere in the 90s, but even just by including Shaq, it kind of introduced me to a lot of these very culturally important black entertainers that I wasn't normally seeing in a lot of my kids' entertainment. So just another angle of, it could have just been put Kenan-and-Kel in it and then whatever, we just cast everyone else to be white. But I felt like it took that extra step to kind of represent the culture in the 90s, or I know George Clinton's older, but I don't know. To me, I thought that was just really cool. And that's probably my favorite George Clinton song of all time. And I never knew that the first time I heard it was in Good Burger when they danced in the asylum to it.
Same. This soundtrack too is just really good and really celebrates black artists and black culture. And I had never heard of George Clinton prior to this movie either, and I think this film does a really amazing job at setting up that scene in particular where they're in Demented Hills. And also to your point too, this was probably my introduction to Sinbad as well. Not only obviously Kenan-and-Kel, but also at the same time, I probably quoted Sinbad's scene where he goes to give Dexter the actual bill, and he's like, "All right, you enjoy your lunch. Well, I'm going to Mondo Burger, home of the Big Booty Burger." And he just walks, mimics that as he's walking out the door. And even when he, at the end, right when the burger is getting ready to fall in his car, he he's still quoting that, and he's like, "Oh, it must be a shift change." That was my introduction to him as an artist. But I didn't realize how. I guess growing up, I didn't realize the soundtrack in particular how much hip hop influence it was, and. I mean, there's a lot of great tracks on here. The only thing that I really remembered about the soundtrack outside of George Clinton was the song we were talking about before recording, the We're All Dudes, Kel Mitchell and Less Than Jake.
Yeah.
But this soundtrack just really emphasizes this film's ability to celebrate and introduce a mainstream audience to black culture in the 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, the clothes, the outfits that they were wearing, especially when they go out on their miniature golf day, I was like, yo, that was the style back in the day. And then seeing the Fruitopias in the glass bottle, I got a big hit of nostalgia, because all I used to drink as a kid was Fruitopias and everything. And also just the sheer ridiculous humor that's in this film. I noticed in the beginning when Kel is off skating and he's skating off, and then he ends up catching a baby and everything. He's skating with the baby. They go to the park, and like literally the guys are playing pickup basketball. He gets the basketball. He gives him the baby. The guys didn't even have the awareness to realize they were like holding a baby. The guy shoots the baby into the hoop.
Dude, I love that so much.
I was like, wow, this is great. Like, I know if people were putting on a serious critical hat, then they're totally missing out on just the ridiculousness and the weirdness of this film, because I love weird stuff. I love weird humor when it's done right, and this film just does it right. Especially, there's another scene where this guy comes in, he's asking for a sandwich. He's like, I asked for a sandwich with nothing on it. And then Kel's like, yeah, I gave you 2 buns and there's nothing in there, so you got nothing. And then the guy's like, no, like, I expected some meat. And the guy's like, well, okay, like, you came in here and said you wanted nothing, so I gave you nothing.
Yeah, I think he calls his friend, he's like, is meat something or is meat nothing? Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone else noticed the amount of sound effects that were used in this movie. I kind of want to go back to the other Nick originals and see, because they're so cartoonic. Like, the physical comedy is one thing, but to have, like, bloop, when Ed has, like, a weird thought, it just struck me. I don't know if that's just my ear.
It's kind of almost like that. It borders on like those like classic like Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, almost in that way. And I think a lot of like the Nickelodeon shows at that time kind of did that, because I remember all that being very heavy on those sound effects. I remember the Amanda Show being very heavy on those sound effects. I want to say like Clarissa Explains It All did that as well. I mean, I think that was just kind of ingrained into 90s Nickelodeon. I think when, you know, a character had a thought or something fell down, like it's like, this is the sound that they make, and then you realize in real life that's not true.
Yeah, and also I think right off the bat, I knew I was going to be in for some laughs with Ed, because writing a dumb character can be very difficult, and, you know, like, one of the holy grails is like a Homer Simpson, where you have to write dumb, you have to be very smart. And I got a big burst out laugh right at the beginning when his alarm goes off and he picks it up and looks at the time and goes, oh, a clock, and like, you know, and I was just like, oh man, I'm in for some good, smart, stupid humor, you know.
I laughed probably way harder than I should have at the prologue where he's on the road to work, and it's flashing back between like Ed's journey and like the customer at Good Burger. And so finally he gets to Good Burger, and the disgruntled employee is like, just give me 2 Good Burgers. And he's like, I can't just give you 2 Good Burgers, dude. You gotta pay for those. And I just remember, like, man, there's so many, like, I've worked in the food industry for 10 years, and, like, so much of, like, the humor that Ed does, and just literal, like, I wanted to do it so bad. The one scene we talked about in particular about the patty being something or nothing, like, I've wanted to do that to people that came in and just asked for, like, plain, you know, whatever food, because I'm not going to say it, that I worked in. And then just be like, I gave you exactly what you asked for. Like, I don't understand the problem.
I mostly want to get into the guys at Mondo Burger, because I also found their scenes to be enjoyable as well. They're just like, they're clearly villains, but they play it definitely to the villain type that you just have to love it. I mean, the guy Kurt, I mean, his catchphrase is like, you're going in the grinder and everything. And then there's the one scene where once Good Burger becomes very popular again because of Ed's sauce, and they see Ed and Dexter interviewing, and then Kurt gets so mad that he goes and pulls a Taibo move on his TV and just kicks it and destroys it. And then his 2 co-workers, his 2 cronies are like, yeah, you really showed them. I was like, this guy just broke his whole TV. Like, what did he show them? Like, pretty sure he probably has some cuts on his legs or something like that. I mean, it's just great seeing villains that are just able to lean into that archetype, but still feel enjoyable to watch and not rudimentary, if you know what I mean.
Kurt must look awfully funny naked, though. Just gotta throw that line out there. Kurt is your mommy and your daddy. Like, I'm pretty sure that I'm just gonna throw this out there that if this was like a darker, like a teenage film, like Mondo Burger would have been like a cult. Like, we would have had some, like, midsummer vibes go down here during the training. It's like, all right, when you reach a certain age, we're going to take you upon the Mondo Cliff, and you're going to go to Mondo Heaven.
As long as we're talking about these villains, I gotta throw a shout out to one of the henchmen. I don't know if you guys were big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans growing up, but I loved that show, and Angel was the spin-off show to that. And one of the henchmen, I think he was the only black henchman, that was J. August Richards, and he played Gunn on Angel for about 5 years, and I'd never seen him in anything other than Angel before, so when he popped up, I literally, like, I had that thing where my brain froze, where I was like, why do I know that face? And I had to just stare at him for 5 minutes. So if you ever get around to watching the show Angel, keep an eye out, because one of the henchmen for Mondo Burgers is a regular on that show.
Interesting.
And I think also this film kind of serves as like maybe somewhat of a warning to fast food, because they talk about the Mondo Burger putting these like additives into their burgers, just making them bigger and bigger. And it's funny because like their only response to when Good Burger becomes popular at the sauce is just, hey, let's just make our burgers 3 times bigger. And and then at the end you see a burger and it looks exactly like almost like a pie. Like you could have put it into like a pie and just put some toppings on it and it would have been good as it is. And it kind of makes you think about these fast food companies, you know, that maybe their food tastes good, but what are they putting in the food? You know, could it be some bad chemicals that are going to do some weird stuff to your body? Because Kurt obviously didn't care. He's like, hey, they're still going to come and eat this food no matter what, you know.
Yeah, I when I was in high school, one of the science classes that I was in, we had to like actually like burn like food that's like considered like harmful for you, like fast food and just like processed food. And I can tell you that it is a sight that never leaves you. It is disgusting. And just from some of the practices that I've had, also just my own jobs working, people that make your food do not always care. I just want to throw that out there. Like, make sure that you like truly watch people or make your own food. Just have to say that.
Oh no.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to turn anyone off from, you know, supporting local businesses and you know, major corporations, and it is what it is, but I've just had some bad experiences in food, so.
No, I believe it. Yeah.
I'm just going to see if my dog goes for it. And if he doesn't, I know something's up.
You know, 'cause a dog will eat almost anything. So if a dog is shying away from eating something, you know that there's a problem.
Dogs are smart about, you know, also being able to communicate about clowns breaking down. That dog's probably just hungry. We've talked a lot about laughter tonight, and I think that one of the standout scenes for me has always kind of been the gag where Ed will stick something up his nose. There's a scene in particular where Ed and Dexter are having a conversation, and Dexter's kind of a little bit bummed out because I think he just got the news about his teacher's car is going to be more than they originally thought. Business is slow because of Mondo Burger. And Ed just kind of sticks 2 grapes up his nose and just kind of starts bobbing up and down, and he's like, I'm Grape Nose Boy, and then he starts doing the blibbity, 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 blibbity. And I mean, it just, I think for me, from someone that, you know, struggles from time to time with mental health, I know that on days where I'm having really bad mental health, I need to laugh. And I think that scene in particular is a great showcase of the relationship and the healing power of laughter. Robin Williams has a great quote about how laughter can really help you and lift you up. And a film like this, I feel like, is really good for films like just to kind of, you know, throw away. And Masha, to kind of bring it back to a film that you name dropped earlier, Bring It On, as I'm staring at it in my collection right now, is another film that I feel like I can throw on at any time and I'm just instantly in a good mood. Or, you know, Pitch Perfect or Mean Girls or Easy A, or just a number of other comedies that Hot Rod, I'm going to stop naming movies now, that, you know, there is healing power in laughter and, escaping for a little bit just to kind of, reassess and reevaluate the heaviness of a situation that's bringing you mental anguish.
Definitely, and I think even in the movie that shows perfectly in that scene, because that is the scene where Dexter still pretty much hates Ed, and by the end of his bloobity spiel, Dexter's laughing. And I think it's that first kind of building block towards their friendship. So as something as stupid as putting grapes up your nose can actually have a really positive impact when on paper you just be like, no, you're just acting childish. But, if it makes a smile to someone's face, especially when they're in their darkest moment, which Dexter is in the movie, it's a very important thing to showcase.
Yeah, I mean, there's, every day, life, we never know what life is going to give us every day. We wake up hoping to have a good day, but sometimes things happen, and they can have an impact on you. And I know for me, there are some days, where I just wake up and I just be like in an awful mood. It maybe could be because I had a nightmare, or maybe because it just be one of those days. But I know that, of course, with a movie, I have my comfort films as well. But sometimes even me seeing my cats just like fighting each other or playing with each other, that can bring a smile on my face. And sometimes I think this film really promotes that. It's the little things, And Ed, he's a big supporter of the little things without him even really knowing it. I mean, him putting the grapes up in his nose, that's nothing monumental or something that even Dexter might not remember from years to come. But right then and there, he needed a pick-me-up, and Ed gave it to him, and Dexter was able to get out of his foul mood, was able to see, that sometimes you just gotta laugh. Laugh is the best medicine. And, any bit of happiness that you could find in this life, you gotta take it. And I think Good Burger is one of those films where no matter whether you think it's good or bad, this film was made with joy. The cast members, they have fun and enjoy doing this. The writer and directors, they have fun and enjoy doing this. And I think that is a credit to the spirit of imagination and to the spirit of people actually making something with passion and not making it just to try to get an easy check,
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
%100% agree. And I also love the effort, whether intentional or not, for Ed to not give up on trying to make him laugh. I feel like it's easy to give up when somebody's like, all right, give me a break, but if you keep trying, maybe another moment, you might brighten up their day. Who knows? Just don't give up.
Yeah, it's a great message, and I think one that I definitely coalesce in every one of us that make up Victims and Villains. That's definitely something that, whether it's a review or it's a podcast, both mini episode or full episode, or sitting down with someone to talk about their movie, we want to bring that spirit of, hey, things are going to get better. Even if you have to seek out years of therapy or go just put yourself on antidepressants, medication, or whatever, you have to start a new hobby or readjust it, or relocate, whatever you have to do, just stay with us. Don't give up. Because this life, it is worth living for, and If you guys need them, there are resources in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening or currently streaming this episode. And I'm kind of curious because Celeste says something. What is one comfort movie that you guys can put on no matter what, and it just instantly gets you guys into a better mood? I'm going to go to our guests first, and ladies first, of course. So I'm going to start with Masha.
I have so many. I feel like I can throw on any like dance movie and that will change my mood. But right now, Sister Act 2 is what's coming to mind. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And just all I need to do is skip to the song bits and everything's changed.
For me, there's actually two comedies that I used to refer to as my sick day comedies, because anytime I was so sick where I couldn't go to school or go to work and I was kind of stuck at home on the couch, I would throw one of these two on. Pretty much I would take turns, so whatever one I watched last, I'd go to the next one. But two of my probably all-time favorite comedies are Shaun of the Dead and Friday. And between those two movies, they just make me giggle so much in such like a base way that it always brings me out of a slump if I watch one of those two movies.
Confirmed.
I know for me, it's kind of a more recent addition, but I've seen this film over millions of times, and every time I watch it, I get a big smile. And for me, it's Into the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man, he's one of my favorite superheroes of all time, and just seeing Miles Morales and what he will represent for black kids growing up, and for somebody like me who was hoping to see a Miles Morales in my childhood, but I didn't, just having that significance. And also the film, the animation being beautiful, and the action being great, and the humor being there. It's a film that it's a winner on all sides. And I know that whenever I put it on, I'm always going to have a good day at the end.
I'm with you on that. I watch Into the Spider-Verse way too much. Masha can attest to that. I pop that
Confirmed.
Blu-ray in regularly. It's fantastic. And I listen to the soundtrack a lot too. I'm one of those weirdos who still has an iPod. So when we're in my car, we're pretty much relegated to what's on my iPod, and I'm always playing the soundtrack for Into the Spider-Verse. It's so good.
Nice. I'm gonna go with two films as well. For this one, my favorite comedy of all time, and it always surprises people given how big of a horror fan I am. But it's Mean Girls. Mean Girls is like one of the movie that it's one of my party tricks, as I've come to say it, is I can quote that movie front to back. I love that movie so much. Oftentimes when people ask me what my hidden talent is I can do the Kevin G rap front to back as well, which is how I dabble in rapping every once in a while. And then also I would probably argue second favorite comedy of all time would definitely, I just lost it, Oh Poop. Yeah, I don't know. Scream's I feel like another good one that kind of steps outside of the comedy, so for say, but it's definitely one that like I grew up with, and it like I just watched it on repeat. It's sentimental for me because it's my first slasher film, and it's so well written. And then you have characters like Matthew Lillard and Jamie Kennedy that make that film just an absolute blast. So tight. All right. Well, we are pulling a little bit of the Love What I Love universe into our own, and they have a staple that they always end their show with, and it is called Beyond the Credits. So, one of you guys want to explain what Beyond the Credits is?
Go for it, Andy.
Cool. Yeah, it's one of our segments that we like to end our show with, where it started off as a fun way to kind of think about these characters in whatever movie we're watching as real people. And, oftentimes credits roll and we get either a happy ever end, not always a happy ever after, but we get kind of a bookend to their story. But we like to pretend if they were real people, where do they go from there once the movie's over? And it has also devolved into a fun kind of way to discuss Do we think something deserves a sequel? Like, is there enough story to actually warrant a new movie? And then we've even gone as far as to make up our own sequels for some movies that might not ever get one. So yeah, that's kind of the genesis of Beyond the Credits.
All right, well, Masha, since Andy introduced our audience to what Beyond the Credits is, what would you say for Beyond the Credits for Good Burger?
Well, I do think that the secret sauce becomes a hit outside of just the Good Burger. I think, Andy, I apologize because I do this to Andy all the time because I don't remember the name of anything. But what is that Bobby movie we watched for the podcast where he ends up writing a book afterwards? Jesus.
Sorry, are you talking about Robert De Niro when you say Bobby movie?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you threw me off already. I was like, what's a Bobby movie?
That Robert De Niro film
where the
King of Comedy, he basically makes money basically after everything that's happened to him, right? Well, basically all that to say is that I think that the secret sauce is franchisable and he's just bringing in the bucks, and I do think that there could be something fun there where they sort of partner up and you can make some sort of fun adventure with what do they do when this business gets a little too big for them to handle, and what's the humor there. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I was kind of thinking about, and this might not be enough fodder for an entire new sequel, but I could almost see, like you said, the sauce getting really big, Ed and Dexter going into business together, selling the sauce, and then Ed almost becoming famous as the face of this sauce, and then I could almost see him being almost someone who writes like self-help books or being like a self-help guru where people actually fall in love with him as a person and his like philosophy on loving the little things in life. And he almost becomes like, and not like in a scam kind of way, like in a legit, people learn, like, it's almost like they read from the Book of Ed and they learn how to appreciate the little things in life and really get joy out of every single day. That's my kind of take on Beyond the Credits.
I love that, Andy.
I have a love-hate relationship with that because I feel like I could see that happening, but there's also a part of me that's like, is Ed capable to write a book? I don't know.
Maybe Dexter could be a ghostwriter, That's great. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe it's 20 years go by and he starts a podcast, and that way he can just talk into a microphone all day.
That seems a little bit more likable. I don't know if we're insulting podcast listeners or podcasters ourselves, but Colas, what do you got?
I can't speak for you guys, but I know I couldn't write a book, and I do podcasts, so that's kind of where I was going for it.
Yeah.
For me, I could see both of these guys, almost have like this series where they just go around the world and they end up cracking down on these fast food conglomerates that are doing like shady stuff behind the scenes, and and I feel that it would be like a little like almost like a Starsky and Hutch kind of like feel to it, where Dexter is obviously the guy who knows everything, and then Ed, he's aloof, but he comes in with these great moments that end up breaking the whole case. So I think I would love to see something like that, a tag team duo like that.
I love that.
So
that's fun.
So one of our writers used to be a chef, and she was actually featured on Guy's Grocery Games. And one of the things that is always kind of like an inside joke between the two of us is like we'll always kind of like text each other like just random Guy Fieri things that we find online. And so my Beyond the Credits would be Guy Fieri gets a hold of Ed's sauce, and he takes him all over the world to see what the sauce tastes good on. And it's just like Dexter, I don't know what he would do if for that situation. I mostly just think Ed would kind of blow up, and Dexter would just kind of be like a sidekick in that regards. I don't know where he would be, but it would be like a buddy film between Ed and Guy Fieri.
I think that's a great angle to sort of tie it to our like modern world. If they're thinking about making a sequel 20 years later, like, that's a great way in.
Please, I love that man so much, and I don't understand why. I'm not a Food Network guy by any means, but I love his shows. So let us know what you guys would do for Beyond the Credits. Tweet to us at Victims and Villains. But speaking of social media, where can people find Love What I Love one more time?
So you can find us at lwil-podcast. We're mainly active on Instagram and Facebook. We do have a Twitter that we do need to get better about updating, but you should definitely check us out on those 3 places. And we also just love hearing any feedback from people. So you can always email us at lovewhatilovepodcast@gmail.com. We love to do, we do segments like Beyond the Credits. We also like to do our own little best worst when we watch a movie, where we make up our own category of what we think is the best worst of something. So we're always encouraging fan engagement, and you can just reach us out on those places and just say hello.
Celeste, where can people find you online, sir?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and letterboxd.com under the handle Black Nerd Magic. You can find me on Facebook under my real name, Celeste Davis. That's Caless. And also check out reviews and podcasts that I've done with our friends over at Feeling Film.
Yeah, Feeling Film is another terrific podcast that we always highly recommend. So please go check out those guys. You can find me on Letterboxd. I am at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow us everywhere at Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. And also wherever you guys get your podcasts from, or you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find more episodes like the one that you're currently listening to. Our spin-off podcast, That's High Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast, movie reviews from Celeste, myself, and other writers, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. And please go check it out. Masha, Andy, thank you guys so much for coming and celebrating diversity with us and talking Good Burger.
Oh, it was an honor. It was so cool. I mean, like you said, we've been talking on Instagram a lot, so it's very cool to finally have the closest to a face-to-face that we can have when we don't live in the same city. I love this. Like Masha said up top, you both have an open invitation. We're going to think of some perfect movies if you guys ever want to come on the podcast, whether you want to present your own movie or just watch one that we pick and give us your thoughts. We're also about to kick off some really fun bonus kind of side episodes of things. And one of the ones that I'm very looking forward to doing is we're calling it the Franchise Deep Dive, where we're going to have a guest who's obsessed with a certain franchise of films that one of us is already in love with, and kind of just go through each one individually in one episode. And the first one we're going to be doing is the Child's Play series. Ooh. So we have so much fun stuff in the pipeline, and we definitely can't wait to collaborate more with you guys.
Yo, when you guys get to Halloween, let me know.
I will, because I don't know.
You can take my place.
Yeah, Masha's gonna sit out most of those. The reason I started those side ones is so I can celebrate horror with people who like it a little bit more than Masha does.
I am 100% game for that. Halloween's my favorite franchise. I'm like halfway done Taking Shape 2, and then I'm gonna be reading Taking Shape. Going back, because I didn't realize it was like the entire franchise until I listened to your podcast. But anyways, we're rambling now. We're going to be back celebrating more diversity with Half Baked this Friday, so make sure that you guys hit subscribe wherever you guys get your podcast from so you guys do not miss a beat. This episode of Victims and Villains is written by Josh Berkey and Celeste Davis. It is produced by Josh Berkey. Special thanks to our guests, Andy and Masha, hosts of the Love What I Love podcast. Please go check them out. Links are going to be in the description below. Music for this episode comes courtesy of Mallory Jameson and Purple Planet, both of which you guys can find links for in the descriptions to further check out their catalogs. Good Burger's property of Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon movies. We do not own nor claim any copyrights. And once again, if you or someone you know is listening to this and you are struggling with suicide, addiction, depression, or self-harm, we encourage you guys to please check out our mental health resource library, all of which you guys can find in the descriptions below. Thank you for listening.